Hello! Thank you so much for tuning in to the Moss Center's Dimensions Dance Theater of Miami Dance Talk in support of their performance coming up on Saturday, July 13th. I'm Annie Hoffman, and I'm the Education and Outreach Manager here at the Dennis C. Moss Cultural Arts Center. This opportunity is brought to you with support of the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs, the Board of County Commissioners, and the Office of the Mayor. I would now like to introduce our moderator, arts journalist, and Barry professor, Dr. Sean Erwin, who will introduce our distinguished panelists. Sean?
Thanks so much, Annie. Thanks for inviting me here today, and I'd like to give a shout out to the Dennis C. Moss Cultural Arts Center for their willingness to promote and support, especially dance in South Florida through these dance talks. I think this is a wonderful way to keep the local community's eye on what's exciting and new in our dance community. I'm here today with Jennifer Kronenberg and Carlos Guerra, former Miami City Ballet principal dancers and co-founding and co-artistic directors of Dimensions Dance Theater of Miami. I'm also excited to be here with Yanis Pikieris, the artist in residence and if I remember correctly, company manager of Dimensions Dance Theater of Miami, and a fabulous dancer in his own right, as well as Ryan Jolicouer-Nye, artistic director of the Oklahoma City Ballet, and Jose Rodriguez, who is our conduit today to Jorge Garcia, whose new piece, whose 1965 piece called Majisimo, Dimensions Dance will be doing a company premiere of on July 13th at 8 p.m. at the Moss Center. So I'm going to start here with just telling you a little bit about the Dimensions Dance and what distinguishes them as a force for dance in South Florida. Since its founding in 2016 by Jennifer and Carlos, DDTM has really rapidly carved out a niche for itself. Anybody who knows anything about dance, and even those for whom dance is new, realize that they've really created a niche for themselves in the arts landscape of South Florida as a neoclassical dance company with a rapidly expanding repertoire, which is very broad and gorgeous in the kinds of works that they have incorporated and present, which include everything from a company dear to my heart, the Joffrey Ballet, and works by choreographer Gerald Arpino, to Venezuelan dancer and choreographer Vicente Nabrada, exquisite pieces by this choreographer, among others. Those familiar with the ballet scene in the United States will know them to be particularly exciting around their promotion and support of new works. Like no company have I seen. It does Dimensions Dance really outpaces other companies in South Florida for its willingness to constantly be innovating with its programming by including new works by rising, exciting new choreographers, among whom, very interesting and very importantly, women figure prominently. So the July program, like I said, on Saturday, July 13th at 8 p.m., we have this new program, and the July program, in fact, sports two world premieres. One premiere by artist in residence and company manager, Yanis Pikieris, another by Ryan, which we'll talk about here in a moment. That one is currently being generated as we speak in their studios. And then it also includes a company premiere of the work that I'd like to start off talking about. Exciting, exquisite new piece I had a chance to see just last week by Cuban National Ballet choreographer Jorge Garcia. It's called Majisimo. So just as a kind of a softball question, just to get us started, maybe to loosen up a little bit, Jen and Carlos, why did you call this latest program Kaleidoscope? And how does this latest program fit with the company's current objectives and future plans?
That's a great question. I've always personally loved kaleidoscopes. I used to play with them all the time when I was a child. And I would just stay fascinated with them and how the colors would, you know, be juxtaposed with each other, how the patterns, the shapes, all of that. And we're often strapped, for lack of a better word, trying to find a title or a common denominator between all of the pieces on our programs, because we try to offer such a broad variety of works on each of our programs. And so trying to find a title sometimes is challenging.
Big challenge.
But there was just something about Yanis Eric's work, Arcadia, and something about Majisimo in the colors patterns, first of all, that both ballets use. The Majisimo jackets are so bright, bold in their primary colors. And then Yanis Eric took some inspiration from an artistic point of departure from an artist from Spain, Cristo Guerlo. And his work is very colorful as well. So all of these colors flashing in my mind kind of automatically brought up that idea of a kaleidoscope. And then very serendipitously, I guess, as I started watching Yanis Eric's choreography in particular, I started noticing the patterns that he was using. And, you know, I said to him one day, I said, "Are you doing this on purpose?" Because it kind of looks kaleidoscopic, and just happened to be that, you know, that's the way it turned out. So I think it is a good name. Unfortunately, we didn't know what Ryan's piece was going to look like because he just started working on it this week. But, you know, I had seen videos, Carlos had seen videos, and just the patterns, you know, that we saw in some of his work as well, lent us to come to that term, kaleidoscope.
But yeah, I agree. It's always a challenge to find a name for our programs. You know, so big challenge always.
At the same time, as usual, it seems like a very deliberate title, which is why what I find with you guys always is a lot of thought and deliberation go into things, which is why I wanted to ask. So thank you for that. Thanks. And you mentioned Majisimo. So since I don't, you know, since I want to be careful with the time, I'd like to get right into talking about this work. It's very exciting. Gorgeous, as you mentioned, the costuming, but also the dancing itself. So this piece is, and correct me if I misremember anything here, it's a 14-minute work set to works by the composer Massenet. There's eight dancers, 5 movements, originally created for the Cuban National Ballet in 1965. And I know Jose and I were talking before everybody showed up today, and I know there's an incredible backstory to this. So I was, you all, again, Jen and Carlos, you all at Dimensions Dance have really like carved out a niche that includes certain specific areas. And one of those areas is works that have a Spanish inflection. So how does, you know, what inspired you to reach out to include Majisimo as part of your repertoire?
Well, to me, Majisimo, I mean, is one of my favorite ballets. I did it in Cuba, danced it several times in Cuba. And we always had the idea when we opened the company just to bring something more classical, you know, for our dances. And, you know, it's always a challenge because we bring in different choreographers, and sometimes, you know, we need to find something that it actually goes with the other pieces or something different, you know, just to offer a variety to our community, you know, the people that like the classical, they can count neoclassical. So, but Majisimo has been very important for me. I mean, I like it. I had such a great time performing that. And I think the company now also, we are in the right place, maybe ready to do it now.
Yeah, I think too, in programming, you always try to think about your audience and your public. And here in Miami, we live in such a melting pot of cultures, but the primary culture, I guess, is Latino, not necessarily from Spain. There's Cuba, there's Colombia, there's Mexican, there's all kinds of Latino influence. And so when we're programming, we always try to find works that we know will speak to our audience, and works that they can see themselves in or feel connected with somehow, to draw them into the theater.
We also thought that now this year it would be good to do it as well. I mean, Majisimo, it has been performed in Miami before. It hasn't been performed for several years. I think the last time it was performed in Miami was by the Cuban Classical Ballet. And so we thought now that also taking the opportunity and the chance that Orlando Salgado is here, you know, was going to be a great moment, a great opportunity to work with him.
Yeah, maybe Carlos, I could segue into one of the questions. Who is Orlando Salgado? He seemed I loved watching him work with the dancers. He was both very precise, very insistent that things happen in a certain way, but he had this warmth and ability to keep the dancers kind of laughing, which made them, it seemed to motivate them to kind of rise to a new level.
Well, I know Orlando for several years already. I mean, we know each other for a long time. I think we met in Cuba actually before I left. So we're talking about many years ago. And when I first found him here in Miami, that was a couple of years ago, and he came to visit sometimes Miami, but then now he moved here to Miami, like I guess I would say like 2-3 years ago. And then we were always talking about, having some kind of collaboration together, and I have mentioned before, maybe Majisimo would be a great piece, to start our collaboration, even though we have brought him several times here to teach classes to the company, And so Orlando is an ex-principal dancer and matron of National Ballet of Cuba and an internationally well-known teacher. He has worked with many different companies internationally. And Orlando was part. He danced Majisimo many times in National Ballet of Cuba, and he has said Majisimo also as well in different companies. And he's a person that it's extremely. He's super disciplined, and he always wants to go by the correct way, to show it. And when we started talking about this project and we had to postpone it, we were supposed to do it in November. And I think it was for some kind of injury, somebody got hurt or something, right? Mm. Then we postponed it, and yeah. But now we are so glad and happy that he's here with us. This piece, all the inside outs from the beginning to the top. He knows everything, every single gesture, pose, everything. So, and for the company, I mean, also he's such a humble guy, an amazing guy. And I think always when we bring somebody, a choreographer or a repetitor to the company, we always look for that, because as you have seen, the company, we have to always try to create and maintain kind of like a family environment. And so he fits perfectly into this. And, you saw the connection with the dancers. So, it's been great having him around.
So just to build on that, just one step further, what I was struck by is that this is a piece by a Cuban choreographer. You also have, I mean, you're Cuban. There are a number of dancers who are part of your company who are Cuban. And as I talked to them last Thursday, I noticed that a lot of them had either danced this piece or were super familiar with the piece. Over the years, Carlos, you've given me a really generous and full sense for the different tradition in ballet that Cuban ballet represents, the approach to technique, the ways in which men are trained differently in Cuba as opposed to, for instance, the United States. And so for the dancers in your company, most of them have been trained in this tradition, the Cuban classical ballet tradition. How is this important for them, this connection with an important figure in this tradition?
I mean, a lot of the Cubans, of course, everybody, all the Cubans know Majisimo. They know what Majisimo is. They have seen it there in National Ballet of Cuba. It was difficult to do it. Like if they were some of them were soloists there, they would never get to do it in National Ballet of Cuba. Prior years, they were only the principal people, dancers that would do Majisimo. So for them now, it has been, they're very excited, extremely excited, and they're so, it's a great opportunity for them now to approach, to actually to perform, to get to perform this piece now. And, Majisimo is very classical, very precise, everything. So they come with this is part of the training too. So, it's, they're very excited to do this. And yeah.
Thanks for that. So Jose, I'm hoping that I can just divert slightly here, because the background of this work is almost as it's almost as gorgeous and interesting as the work itself. So if I remember, if I remember correctly, this piece was it was commissioned in 1964, but it comes out in 1965. It's premiered in 1965. But shortly thereafter, in 1966, Jorge Garcia, he defects during a tour to Europe. And I was hoping maybe you could give the audience, because you have your finger on the pulse of this piece from its inception. I was hoping you could give the audience a sense for this connection with the Cold War, and also a sense for, let's say, the reasons for why this piece originated to begin with, which are themselves quite interesting.
Well, the reason is simple, and it's very easy to understand. The ballet is a success. It was a big success, and the fact that Jorge Garcia defected, of course, it was a blow for the company, but I guess they did the pros and cons and said, well, the ballet is good. We're going to have it forever. As I told you before, the repertoire of the company was very limited back then. And there was another piece who was always a success. So in the beginning, I remember in the program, it was only J. Garcia, the first letter of his name. But, and that people don't know, Alicia Alonso in the 70s and Jorge, they met in the 70s in Lisbon as a request by Alicia, of course. And he never told me if Majisimo was talked about, but after that meeting, his full name was back in the programs of the company when the ballet was performed. So I think that's I'm sure Alicia has unlimited power back then, and anyway, it was good for the company to have the ballet. So
you mentioned, though, at the time, this was part of an initiative on the Cuban National Ballet to, as you just said, increase the repertoire. But who did they this wasn't the only piece that they attempted to do that with. Am I right?
Well, there were, as far as I remember, the 4 or 5 more pieces. Once, in my opinion, was very powerful. It was Renaissance. It was called Renaissance Rehearsal. Okay. It was a piece of Lorenzo Monreal, from Lorenzo Monreal, based in the history of Romeo and Juliet, who he did a tour de force with that ballet, because in 20 minutes, the overture from Tchaikovsky, Romeo and Juliet, he did the whole story of Romeo and Juliet in black box. It was fantastic, only playing with the lights and with the dancers, of course. But Alberto Alonso, Fernando Alonso's brother, didn't like the piece. I remember he talked about Lorenzo, whatever he told him, I don't remember, but he talked to him about, and the ballet was performed 2 or 3 times and never again. Who is a shame, because it was a little beautiful piece of a ballet. Yes.
So this was Majisimo is the only piece to survive from this time.
Yeah. Yes.
Could you say a little bit? We've already mentioned it once, but it's very evident in the costuming. Could you say a little bit about the Maja and Majo tradition? I get from Spain, but that's maybe I misunderstand it. This was a class of people in Madrid Do I remember?
No. Let me explain. The Mahos and Mahas in the 19th century, in the beginning of the 19th century, there were commoners who used to dress different, who were people of very nice to treat with, you know. There were people who dressed different. They were nice to people. They were like probably nowadays punks, believe it or not. And first of all, they were commoners. Remember that, because in my opinion, you know that the maha from Goya, the maha, the naked maha, and the dress maha, is supposed to the mother. It was supposed to have been the Duchess of Alba, where it's unthinkable. And the name of the title of the painting, Maha, dress or naked, is because she was a commoner. Nobody knows about the model who was, but definitely she was a commoner. Before, Goya painted the Maha naked. But it was, it was a big scandal where he presented the painting, and he refused to cover her body. So he did another painting, and that's what we have two, Maha's naked and dress. And after, with time, for example, a nice spectacle or a nice whatever, it was becoming Kemaho or Kemaha. So eventually it ended up like everything was beautiful. A handsome man, a beautiful woman, is a Maha or is a Maho. That's the story of the Maha, the name Maha.
No, thanks for that. In fact, you just unexpectedly, the National Gallery of Art in DC just had an exhibition of Goya, and those works were front and center. And I hadn't made that connection before, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Maybe we could talk a little bit then about the ballet itself. I was hoping to maybe get a sense for what parts of this ballet are challenging for the women, for instance. What aspects of it?
Well, no, challenging if, don't forget that the ballet has a classical base, totally classical. So a ballet dancer, a dancer trained in ballet, I don't think there's a challenge in what I'm talking about, the technique of the ballet. The challenge, and that's the point, what Jorge was very adamant to show in the ballet was the pride of the Spaniard, the pride of the man, the mystery of the woman behind the fan, where you know the fan was an object of protection, you know, to gossip, just to take a secret behind the fan. It's very interesting. Jorge wanted to do that. He wanted to show if something that he really wanted to show, it was that pride. That pride that obviously is very Spaniard. It's very Spaniard. And he did it. He did it. He did it. And he insisted every time he took a rehearsal in the body language, just to have that, you know, that attitude, who showed the pride. At the same time, the happiness, because Spanish are very happy people. And you can see in the play, it's all happy. It's like a feast, you know. What else do you want me to tell you about? Because this, I mean, the inspiration, let's go about the inspiration. As I told you before, Jorge was inspired by the Goyesca's painting from Goya. But more than that, it was from the Escuela Bolera from the 19th centuries, the early 19th century. And thinking about all that, the music, it was the first thing that he chose. What can I gonna use? He has a very well knowledge in opera. So he remembered Massenet and the Cid, who has the second act is all music. So actually, the music is fantastic. Fantastic. I don't think that ballet could be done with another music but the Mastanet music. He was very clever. He wanted to do something very precise, very small. He wanted people to want more, to keep looking at more. And it was a conjunction of different things. And believe me, I was very close to him back then. And for the first time, for a person who's not a choreographer, it's amazing what he did. Everything was perfect. The timing, the music, the costumes, everything was fantastic. The proof, the ballet nowadays is fresh as it was 50 years ago. Don't you think? Fantastic.
I thought so. I thought so.
Uh-huh.
Jose, thank you. Jen and Carlos, would you want to add anything to that? I saw everything that Jose just described. I saw in the studios last Thursday.
I just wanted to add something also that Jose also was saying before, that besides the technical challenges that the choreography that it has to be present there, also is the style of the ballet. The style of the ballet. And Orlando, I think the way how the girls uncover their face with the fan, Orlando has been very specific and very good working with the girls, and also the guys, that pride and, sure.
It was really particularly interesting for me, being the gringa. I'm only Cuban by association. To sit in the rehearsals and watch, it was a really new experience for me, because I have not danced Majisimo. I've seen it performed, but I was never in on rehearsal process. But I have danced other ballets that were inspired by Spain. I mean, there's Don Quixote, there's, Spanish and the Nutcracker. There's all kinds of classical ballets that have a divertissement, even with the Spanish flair. And they very easily become a caricature of a culture. And I did not feel this way at all watching Majisimo. I really felt like there was an authenticity about it, a respect between the choreographer and the culture, and a really important elegance and refinement. Not heavy on the sauce, right? Just very pure, pristine gesture and homage to the Spanish culture.
I saw that as well. I agree with both what Jose said and what you both just said about how polished it is. It is a really gorgeous choreography. I think audience are going to love this. Just keeping my eye on the time, I was hoping I could then shift a little bit and maybe talk with Yanis Pikieris about this new work, Arcadia. Yanis, I've followed your work for years. I followed your work since 2016. You've been a frequent contributor to Dimensions Dance, and some of your pas de deux that you've created on the company are like just very memorable moments for me, arresting moments. But this is a group piece. What I've been able to catch of it, it's a group piece. It'll also be your 8th piece for the Moss main stage, if I remember that correctly. Could you talk a little bit? How many dancers are part of this choreography? How many movements? I know that your connection with the composer is pretty close. This will be the second time you employ. Is it Oliver Davis's work? Yes. The last one was in the last piece. Let's see if I'm not sure if I've even got that note here, but maybe you can remind me of the last piece that you did that you also used his work heavily. So again, could you give us a sense for the number of dancers, the costuming? Let us see it a little bit.
Yeah, so it is a big group piece. It's 18 minutes long. It has 5 movements. In total, there's 12 dancers, 8 women and 4 men. In terms of costuming, they're in very simple sort of leotards and tights, but they're in these very sort of stark, bright colors, which is unusual for me. I think a lot of my other ballets have been very dark, and I've been trying to be a little bit more colorful recently. And yeah, I think most of the inspiration came from Oliver Davis's music, which is absolutely fantastic. And it's so colorful and dynamic, and it has so much texture that lends itself so well to dance. So yeah.
And so I mean, going back to Jen's comment at the beginning about Kaleidoscope, I'm in complete agreement with her in that assessment, because this piece is very, like, the women, the men, they're very up. There's a lot of pirouettes, there's a lot of turns, they stream across the stage, but there's a lot of moments where they're turning in place. So I think that connection is a good one. But the name Arcadia itself is notable because it has a lot of classical and a lot of classical connotations. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about why you chose that time.
Yeah, I think everybody works in like a particular order. For me, in this case, I was looking for music first because I didn't know what I wanted to do for the program. And when I found the music and I was looking and listening through the albums of Oliver's music, I found a track called Arcadia, which I had heard the word before, but I wasn't the most familiar with the meaning. And so when I went and did a quick Wikipedia search, and I got an understanding of this sort of idea of harmony with nature, and I thought that was really beautiful. And then listening to the rest of the music more, it really evoked that word. That, and also connecting to artwork by a Spanish artist who is contributing some art to the piece as well. But yeah, so I started with the music, and from that I started playing with the idea of how do I start sort of showing that within the movement, now that I have this word that I wanted to play with. So yeah, there are a lot of, I think you mentioned that there's a lot of things that move together, and there's definitely a lot of circles and circular formations and things like that. And I do think that a circle really shows harmony and completion and all of these things. So yeah, I tried to play as much as I could with the meaning of the word in terms of the choreography and the imagery and all these things.
And so to follow up on that, what I understood also is that this particular piece was really the product of a collaboration between you, Oliver Davis, Christo Guelov, that you were very much inspired with them, that you were communicating with them, and that you prefer this kind of collaborative generation behind your choreographies. Did I understand that? Like, were you all really talking to one another?
Not with Oliver Davis, but yes, with the artist. So I met him through Carlos, through someone that introduced him to Carlos, and I looking at some of some of the artwork that he had done in the past, and specifically one sort of art installation that he did somewhere in Spain, where he took these very just abstract shapes with really, really bright colors and hung them all over a forest. And I thought, and that was like before I even heard the music and the word Arcadia came into play. But I saw that, and I kind of liked that sort of juxtaposition of the nature, and then just these like really bright colors and just shapes. So I thought that was an interesting concept to play with, and I told him I was going to listen to some music and see what I had to give him, to see where he moves ahead with that, because he wanted to contribute something as well. And the more that I listened to the music, and then the title of that one track, Arcadia, came up, and then the Googling of the word Arcadia, and all of those things sort of kind of connected in a way that was really ideal. And so yeah, and then that's how the piece was built. But I do think that I find more inspiration working like that, especially recently. I feel like sometimes it's very hard for me to decide what I want to do. So when little things like this come around that's kind of spark ideas or give me some sort of inspiration for the work, it definitely puts me on a good track in the studio.
Yeah, and I think that a fruitful one too, because the piece is gorgeous. Um, uh, I'm going to add this question in because whenever I have an opportunity to add a question like this one in, I take it. And I know you already, like we talked a little bit about this last when I came down to the studios last Thursday, but Arcadia itself, its name is, and you just said it has like this ideal register, the sense of utopia, and utopia, usually has the sense of like something which is there, but it is difficult to attain and it recedes. And even the Greek notion of Arcadia was a place where human beings didn't go. It was where the great Greek god Pan and his nymphs and satyrs, it's where he held court. But it wasn't a place where human beings, they knew about it, but weren't able to get there. So the nature connotations are very strong, both in the title and I think also as it comes out in the dance itself. Are you with this really rich notion, are you thinking about things like climate change, global warming, this disharmony with nature that we experience? Is this in the background of your mind at all?
I was having a conversation about this with someone today, actually. And I feel like it is an abstract work and it wasn't my initial intention. But I do believe that the art we create reflects our own reality in the real world around us, whether we intend it to happen or not. I think it just naturally happens that way sometimes. And I think that audience members can have a similar experience watching the piece where, it might not be what I intended, but the piece might evoke certain feelings or resonate with them in a certain way that reflects their reality. And I think that that's true of all art, that, I might not be trying to say something, but it might just happen that it does because it is what we're living, or it's what's happening around us. And it's something that might be on my mind. And maybe I'm not as good at hiding it as I think. So, yeah, I don't ever think that I try to be literal about anything, but I do think that certain things kind of sneak their way in, as it's happening around.
So last question before we turn to Ryan and this new work that he's creating for Dimensions Dance. I was hoping to get a sense for, like, do a little thought experiment with you. Let's say I'm a first time, maybe I go to some other functions at the Moss, but I don't really hit the dance program very often because I don't really understand dance. I mean, I think that's part of the problem is a lot of people think, oh, pretty, it looks pretty, but I don't really get it. So how would a first time audience, somebody who is attending the Moss for a dance program, what would you suggest to them to look for in your piece?
Oh, wow, that's difficult. I don't know. I you got me there. No, I honestly think, apart from just wanting to see pretty dancing, I think, I don't know, hopefully they see something that inspires them or like I said before, that or evokes a certain emotion that they've maybe not experienced from a movie or a ball game or something, but maybe watching something like this and seeing, people just like them doing these incredible things that they're not used to seeing before. Maybe that might open up, a whole other world to them that they're unaware of, or hearing a music that they wouldn't listen to on the radio, that makes them also feel a certain way because it's beautiful, And I think for all three of the pieces, I've heard all the music that's being rehearsed to. There's so much variety, and I feel like any of those musics can evoke some kind of feeling or some kind of something that someone who's not super familiar with classical music or dance might, react to. So I don't know. I hope they see something pretty and that they like it, from all of the pieces.
I expect so, but I hear what your suggestion is to attend to the feelings and thoughts that the piece inspires.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense. Yeah, that sounds pretty straightforward. Ryan, I'm super glad to meet you. I think is this the second piece then that you have created on this company? I think On the Sky was the first. Do I remember that correctly?
Yes.
When did that piece premiere with Dimensions Dances?
So On the Sky, we didn't he didn't create On the Sky for us, but we did perform it. He was gracious enough to give us the rights to perform it. We premiered it on tour, actually, up in Gainesville. We were invited up to Santa Fe College. We were in residence there for a week for the Young Artists workshop that they have. And at the end of the residency, the resident company puts on a performance. And so we premiered that as part of that show. And we did it a couple of more times in South Carolina, and we did it at the Miniachi Performing Arts Center. I think a total of 3 times.
But there's a big distance between Miami and Oklahoma. And so, as I said at the beginning, Ryan, you're the artistic director of the Oklahoma City Ballet. How did this collaboration even get started?
Well, a very good friend of mine dances with the company, and she was in fact the dancer that I lent On the Sky to perform. And I think through the years of her performing it, she's probably had 3 or 4 different partners. And I feel like kind of through that time period of Dimensions performing that work, and the ballet world is a very small world. And so I sort of already felt like I knew Jennifer and Carlos. And when they invited me to come and create a world premiere, of course, I didn't hesitate because, they're such wonderful people, and I really, truly appreciate what it is they're doing down here.
So have you begun working on that premiere with them in the studios yet?
I did. I started yesterday.
Great. So maybe I know last week I was a little sad that I wasn't able to get a glimpse out of it, but maybe you could give us at least a sense for what the piece, how it's shaping up, what music you've chosen, what kind of costuming you're thinking about, how many dancers it involves.
Well, my process, I think, is perhaps a bit different than most people. I tend to not plan anything in advance, especially if I'm going to a company where I don't know the artists. I really think early on in my career, I used to write things down and try to get the dancers to do the steps that I had written on the paper, and that felt very contrived. And so I showed up yesterday. I had no music plan in mind. I picked a piece of music that happened to be an Ezio Basso work. He's an Italian composer. And we just started making movement. And I find that artists have, each individual human being, and taking that further, each individual artist has unique colors in their soul with how they hear music, how they interpret movement, how they capture the essence of what it is I'm trying to give out, and things start to take shape. And I think, the ballet is still kind of in its infancy. I don't think we really know yet what it's going to turn into. But hearing that the program is called Kaleidoscope is really interesting for me, because all of these colors, I think that the dancers, particularly in the company, bring that are different, also have a cohesive nature that creates something really beautiful. And I really plan on utilizing that individuality and that color in the creation of the work. And they will very much be, they'll have a heavy hand in kind of deciding at the end, when we all step back and look, what is this piece about? What does it mean? And how does it fit into the rest of the program?
Interesting, Ryan. So what I hear in your process is something I'm hearing. I don't hear this often. Usually there's this kind of, I don't know, it might be a little too strong to say traditional notion of the choreographer who sets down, like has the vision in the mind, and the dancers are kind of matter for the form that they have in the mind, and they set that onto the dancers. But I'm hearing from occasional choreographers that they really appreciate a much more collaborative approach, where the dancers, where you might make a suggestion of something, this is what I'm thinking of, and then the dancers might execute that, and then might suggest something along the lines of making maybe like a small change, or giving you a suggestion of how the phrase should unfold from there? Am I hearing you? Is that kind of your creative process?
Yeah, I mean, there's a fine line you have to walk when you use the word collaboration, because, my job is to come in and create something, not to come in and let the dancers create it. Because I feel like they have their job and I have my job, and the best way we can do both of those things is to kind of meet in the middle with a conversation. And I'll give you an example. If I ask a dancer to do a turn that might be in sort of an obscure position, and they fall out of it in some direction, any direction, I might say to them, well, does that feel good to fall out of it? Does it feel good to fall out of it in that direction? Do you feel like that will happen most of the time? Because if that's the case, then we can use that. You naturally went this way. Let's take it this way. And then maybe because you're falling, you want to step with this leg and we transition in this way. So I let the dancers kind of bring a little bit of their own musicality, their dynamic, and how they move within the framework of a single note, but also their own natural coordination. I don't want to fight that. And it's a bit different when you're working with students, per se, because students, you're trying to train them in a way to get them to do something that's beyond them. Whereas when you're working with professionals, you trust that they have an established sense, right? And so what you're trying to do is pull that out, recognize it, and then capitalize on it.
Makes perfect sense. Very clear. Thank you for that. I guess the only other question that I had about the piece that you're currently unfolding is more about the nature of working with this particular company in particular, because you've worked with many companies, but I'm thinking about Dimensions Dance among the landscape of South Florida, classical, neoclassical, and modern dance companies, and each one has a very distinct and different character. So I know what I think that is, in my experience of Dimensions Dance. And I was wondering if you could talk about how your experience of it, what feature about this company really jumps out at you in this early phase of your working relationship with them?
Well, I have to say that some of my favorite companies, my favorite dancers, collectives that I've ever done work on, are dancers that probably have no business working together in the same company. You have companies like New York City Ballet, where everybody comes from the same training. They know the same rep, and then you have companies that are made up of dancers that may just be passing through for a short time, or dancers that found their way into a company like Dimensions, and they've been there since the beginning, and they'll be there till the end. And this kind of diverse set of ingredients that seems like it's like a recipe, right? It seems like these ingredients maybe shouldn't go together. Somehow they do, and they make something amazing. And so each of these dancers is an ingredient for this recipe, for this new dish that we're going to make, and just see what happens. And for me, that's some of the most exciting art to create, because you don't really know where it's going to go. And I kind of, you have your unconscious mind and your conscious mind. And I really believe that people also have kind of a super conscious mind, which is kind of your instinct, what the direction you just naturally go. And in a situation like this, I really try to rely on that, and trust that the I don't know what it is, the art gods just, things just work out. It just works out. We had a funny moment in the studio yesterday, I think, where I had just finished some choreography. We had done probably too much choreography before we went back to listen to the music. And I said, okay, let's go back and see what Izio Basso has to say about this. And so then we go back and we put these steps to music. And it just so happened that how we were all feeling the music, right at the end of that, was a significant change, which is where we would begin to shift. And so somehow naturally, I had just unknowingly made up enough steps to fill exactly the amount of music I needed to, and then we transition. So it all kind of works cohesively, kind of magic.
It sounds like it. It sounds like a wonderful experience. Well, with that, I just want to I think maybe take a step back and just thank you all for taking the time today and for bringing energy and this kind of your generous spirits to this talk. I'm looking forward to, as I'm sure many folks in South Florida are, to the July 13th program, Kaleidoscope, 8 p.m. And I see Annie there, and hopefully she'll redirect it. But it's again, my hat's off to you all, and especially you, Jennifer and Carlos, for your willingness to continue promoting, supporting, commissioning new works by and bringing exciting pieces and programs to South Florida audiences. Thank you all.
Thank you so much to our moderator, Sean Erwin, and to our incredible panelists for participating in this wonderful dance talk. As Sean mentioned, the performance is Saturday, July 13th at 8 p.m. And if you don't have your tickets yet, there are still some available. You can find them at mosscenter.org to get your tickets. And we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.